morning. I am Joe Edelman, and welcome to the Last Frame Live. Sorry, I had a little technical thing going there. Wanted to make sure you could hear me. Hey, as always, it's great to have you tonight. Can we stop all the whining about Instagram? Everybody's freaking out. Everybody's all upset. Instagram sucks now. It's Reels. It's this. It's that. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Well, I have a couple suggestions, and I have what I honestly feel is the best alternative to Instagram for photographers. So we'll get into it. But in the meantime, you know the drill. If you're here live, do me a favor in the chat, leave me a little message, let me know that you are here and where you are in the world. And hey, if you're not here, I hope it's a good excuse. But if you're watching the replay, leave me a message in the chat. Let me know you checked in, let me know you watched, and let me know where you're watching from. All right, so that being said, oh, and hey, while you're down there, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube shares the show with other photographers to help them find out about the show. And of course, you can certainly go ahead and you can hit that share button, let your photography friends know that we're streaming live on YouTube right now. Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest and easiest way to get the word out. I really only have one announcement that I want to share with you before we get going tonight, and that is my upcoming teaching schedule. So just a couple reminders. Number one, in the month of August, I do have a presentation coming up. It's a free one, August 9th, online. So you can watch from anywhere in the world. This is social media for photographers. And yes, it is an updated presentation that factors in a lot of the recent changes and evolution that's happening currently in social media. So we'll be talking about that. It is helpful not only for photographers that are looking to start a business, build a business, make more money, or get started, but also for photographers who just want to build a following and meet like-minded people around the world. So check that out. Also, August 23rd, this is the first time I've done this particular presentation online. It is called Introduction to Portrait Photography. Excuse me. Again, it's a free one. It's a live presentation done via Zoom. Covers a lot of the basics, but when I say a lot of the basics, everything in terms of how to approach planning a shoot, setting it up, doing your lighting, posing, what's the best gear, all of that kind of stuff. And then in the fall, we'll be doing a more advanced, detailed version with some advanced lighting and some creative lighting techniques. But the other one that I want to make sure you all know about, especially if you're in Texas or if you're anywhere near Houston, Texas, September 1st, I will be doing a presentation on behalf of Tamron at the Houston Camera Exchange, and it is called an Evening of Creative Fashion Portraiture. And yes, it's $100 to attend, but here's what you get for $100. Number one, you get to spend 3 hours with me. I mean, come on, right? But no, seriously, this is a hands-on workshop. So it's not me standing there talking at you for 3 hours. God, no. There is a short demo in the beginning to kind of set it up and show you folks some of the things that are very important to me in terms of how I approach shooting my fashion portraits. I will have all kinds of cool styling stuff and foo-foo with me, the same kinds of crazy things that I use to create the fashion portraits here in my studio. We're going to have an absolutely gorgeous model. I will share pictures of her with you in a week or two. Also, we'll have a makeup artist, hairstylist, the works. But here's the cool part. Since I'm only talking for a little less than an hour, you, the attendees, are going to shoot. But this is not one of those deals where I set something up and everybody takes pictures of it. That's pointless, right? This is going to be a fully collaborative effort. It's a small group. There's not going to be like 50, 60 people at this event. They're capping it at 15. If we're lucky, we'll actually have a couple less, but you will create your own unique fashion portraits with my help. And you will be the only person that shoots your fashion portrait. So you will go home with uniquely styled images from that night. So I love doing this particular kind of workshop because it's much, much more hands-on. You know, a lot of times hands-on workshops are literally just the idea. The instructor sets something up and everybody takes a picture of it. That's not really hands-on, right? This case, you're actually going to be creating, and I'm going to be your assistant. So hopefully you'll check that out. I'll go ahead and I will drop that link in the chat so that you guys can go and see that. Again, that's in Houston, Texas. So if you can make it, I hope to see you there, right? All right. So our topic tonight, and look, I know this is one of those topics that some of you, when you hear this topic, it's just like, oh, social media crap. Oh, I hate social media. Oh, honestly, I don't blame you. I really don't. Some of you, it's frustration because you're trying to make money. You're trying to build a business. And for the longest while, you know, what's everybody say? Hey, gotta be on Instagram. Instagram's where it's at. That's how you get your traction. That's how you get found. And a lot of photographers were building a business and finding new clientele thanks to Instagram. But Instagram's been changing a lot lately. And when I say a lot lately, I mean a heck of a lot, and really very quickly and really very dramatically. And the long story short, they're getting their butts kicked by TikTok, right? And honestly, TikTok is not a great platform for photographers. We'll talk about that. But that also means that these changes in Instagram are not helping a lot of photographers. So I'm going to, kind of give you my thoughts on that to maybe help you frame and sort out your thoughts, but also kind of try and help solve some problems in terms of what these Instagram changes are creating. But that being said, I know this is not everybody's favorite topic. I am going to do my darndest to wrap up on this topic by 6:30. So that's like 23 minutes from now, so that we can do some Q&A. I have one question that was sent to me. Person's really desperate to see this. It's kind of a carryover from the demo that I did last week about the colored gels and that, where I basically built the lighting backwards, right? But they were really kind of perplexed how I got that two color split on the background. So I promised them I would show that tonight. But look, if you're here, why are you here? How can we help? What are you struggling with? What's it going to take for you to prove your photography? Let's talk about it. All right. So I will set aside easy half hour for that. So back to the Instagram thing. All right. A couple things that we have to remember. So let's deal with some of the tough love first, right? And this is why I went with the title, Can We Stop the Whining? Photographers are great at whining. And I'm saying photographers, I'm a photographer. Every now and then I whine. Look, we're all guilty, okay? But here's the problem with the whining when we do it. Really what we're doing is we're kind of deflecting. We're trying to create an excuse for our shortcomings. Because most of the stuff that we as photographers whine about, it's not worth whining about. It's just part of like, look, if you're going to be a photographer, deal with it. Photographers whine, it's like, well, there's too much competition from Craigslist photographers because their prices are so cheap. If your competition is a Craigslist photographer, your photography sucks. Sorry, just keeping it real. Look, the reality of it is the coolest thing about being a photographer, I don't have competition. I've never had competition. The only time in my entire career that I've experienced competition was when I was young and I was a newspaper photographer. And there would be 4 newspapers and 2 wire services all at the scene of some big news event, and everybody trying to get the best picture that tells the best story in one frame. That was competition. But that was also the nature of the job. In fact, we kind of thrived on that. But portraits, weddings, commercial advertising, fashion work, modeling portfolios, headshots, you name it, all that stuff, I never experienced competition. And part of that is simply because I never look at other photographers as competition. Because I'm me and they are them. I don't do what they do and they don't do what I do. A portrait is not a portrait, it's not a portrait, it's not a portrait. They're all different, right? Embrace that. Find your niche and realize that you don't need to have 1 million people following you to be successful. And there's no competition. So that's one of the things that we hear photographers whine about all the time. And now recently we're hearing photographers like, oh my God, the world's ending, the sky is falling, Facebook sucks. They are changing the Instagram algorithm and all we see now are Instagram reels and reels and reels and reels. So look, let's break it down to some important facts before we get into the opinions and also the suggestions, right? Here are the facts. Number 1, Facebook, Instagram, they are a business. We as photographers, the users, we do not own it. We don't even pay to have access to it. And the overwhelming majority of you, if you're smart, you're not even paying to advertise on it. You're simply posting and building your following organically. And that's honestly, that's what you should be doing. But now that's changing and they're kind of taking it away. And they're, to be clear, they're not really taking it away, but they're promoting different content. Recently, we have seen video messages from the president of Instagram, who works with Meta, explaining very, point blank. And I appreciate his candor that they're not getting away from photographs. It's part of their heritage. It's part of the origin of Instagram. However, they are focusing much, much more aggressively on video. But let's explain why. I mean, it's easy to just say, well, TikTok's kicking their butt, because they are, right? But let's kind of look at why is TikTok kicking their butt. TikTok came along and they created something different than Facebook and Instagram. And from the beginning, TikTok did it with very, very smart algorithms, really smart algorithms. In fact, we could argue that TikTok kind of cracked the algorithm code right out of the box because their algorithms were intensely addictive, and they still are. They learn very rapidly and they learn very well, and they give you what you like to see. Done. Better than anybody else, hands down. So as a business, Meta, Facebook, Instagram, they've got to keep up. But here's what we're also learning. And this is data that has been delivered to us by TikTok, data that's been delivered to us by Meta, data that's being delivered to us by marketing research companies all around the world. Starting with Gen Z, the younger generation, they want video. Video is their thing. So their version of social is video, and their version of social is much more entertaining than it is what you had for lunch yesterday, or keeping up with what your best friend did 3 days ago, or knowing what your aunt and uncle are up to at the beach on vacation. They're not as into that, right? That's becoming kind of an older generation thing. And remember, things evolve. We are so used to social media that we kind of accept it for as it is, but there is no as is yet, simply because in the big scheme of things and in the big scheme of how society changes and how things evolve, social media is actually still in its infancy. But remember what social media is. All of you start thinking computers, all of you start thinking phones. No. At its core level, social media is the act of using technology to be social, to interact with people. Now, depending on what generation you're in, you're going to argue like, look, you can't be social on an electronic device. Well, the fact is you can. The definition of social changes over time. It actually has throughout history. The way we approach being social as a society has changed throughout history, and it will continue to change. But social media is not a technology thing. Technology is the tool that we're using. So for photographers, the best advertising, the best marketing the photographers have ever had. And the answer to this statement is the same now in 2022, July 27th, 2022. It's the same now as it was in July 27th of 1980, when I was 20 years old. The best form of marketing is 1, excellent photography. 2, word of mouth. And this is why we are so lucky today. Yes, lucky. Even with Instagram changing their algorithm, even with Instagram forcing a lot of photographers who are in business to have to change the way they market themselves, we are lucky because back in 1980, word of mouth, it could take 2, even 3 years for a good deed, a good job to be talked about and spread around and come back to you full circle as a new client who heard from a previous client. Now, in 2022, word of mouth can happen in seconds, and it can come from around the world, which, depending on what kind of photography you're doing and who your potential clients are, around the world is not your goal. You just need to worry about the people down to the end of the block in most cases. But the fact is, it can happen wicked fast. So it's important that you remember that analogy, because at the end of the day, it's those two things. Those two things are what's going to make it easy for you to build a business, and those two things are what's going to make it easy for you to simply build a following. So let's deal with the folks that are really just interested in building a following, meaning, they want to find like-minded people from around the world to share their pictures with, maybe to get feedback with, just to tell stories to, just to get to know people. For you folks, instead of places like Instagram, where if you think about it, it was easy to find like-minded people, but there's never a lot of interaction unless you're going to go through the comments, and the comments were never particularly user-friendly. Your best opportunities are websites that have actually been around for quite a while. Number one on the list, Flickr. Flickr's kind of still the original Instagram. It's just that it didn't take off in a social media format and they didn't build an app for it early on. But Instagram started as a photography sharing site as an alternative to Flickr. Flickr's still here. In fact, you can even still use a free version. And even the paid version of Flickr, gang, it's dirt cheap. And the benefit of the paid version, and seriously, I don't make any money. I'm not even going to share a link with you. Go look at it. Flickr, Flickr.com. The benefit of the paid version is you can upload high-res files, you get more information, more communications tools, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, excuse me 1 second, folks. Here we got somebody that's deciding to be an idiot in the chat, so we're gonna just get rid of them. My apologies. There we go. All right, they're gone. Okay, so for you folks that just want to find like-minded individuals, number one, sites like Flickr, 500 pixels, both excellent. Also, and this is not, it's going to sound like I set this up to advertise my community. It's not. There are other communities. And I'm talking about Facebook groups. I'm talking about communities. One of the new alternatives that are happening to social media, to Facebook groups. So you folks know that I have a Facebook group. It's a portrait photography Facebook group. I've got 10,300 some members. So whenever someone asks to join the group, little piece of background information. Whenever somebody asks to join the group, I get a notice and it gives me a little summary of that user's history on Facebook. So just so you know, anytime you ask to join a Facebook group, whoever owns the group gets this information. And it's basically a link to your profile. It tells us what year you joined Facebook. It tells us how many Facebook groups you are a member of, and if you're in any of the same groups that I happen to be in as the group owner, okay? And then you probably know a lot of groups like mine, they ask you to answer a couple questions and it gives you the answers to those questions. The overwhelming majority of people that ask to join my Facebook group are in over 100 groups. So here I have a Facebook group, and this is the case with most Facebook groups. 10,300 members, and there's about 100 people that participate occasionally. That's why I started my own community, and that's why you're seeing more and more communities start up. And a lot of people think I'm crazy. Why do they think I'm crazy? Because my community has less than 300 members in it. But my community is freaking awesome. My community, by the way, here, I will share the link. I mean, I can't mention it and not share the link. So at least let me get the link up. It is the TOGKnowledge Learning Community. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to get you the link here. And I'm not going to give you the whole sales pitch. I'm not going to walk through it. You guys can go check it out. Just understand, I'm putting the link here in the chat. Understand that if you do join, it's free to join, by the way, free. No hooks, no catches, free to join. Make sure you watch the little video that's on that URL that I gave you and follow the directions before you join. Otherwise, you won't get in because it is not Facebook. It is not social media at all. Not even close. And that's the point. So think of it more as a camera club that operates virtually. Right now, there are people from 32 different countries that are represented in TOGKnowledge. And again, there are other communities that are starting up. The best part of it is the people like myself that are running these communities, we're making the community smaller, tighter, more strict on the guidelines so that there is real participation. So I'll tell you right now, if you join my community, be careful because you, oh my God, they're back again. Here we go. Let's get rid of this idiot. Okay. There we go. So we'll hide them again. Sorry, folks. Somebody's out playing around tonight. So that's one way for the folks that have a desire just to find other people. Now, what about the folks that are trying to make money? Because I know they're the ones that are like sitting on the edge of their seat saying, Joe, you said you're going to be done at 6:30 and now there's only 9 minutes. Give us the answer, right? So first of all, full disclosure, I have always, and you know, I am one of those influencer type people, as much as I hate that label, I've always put very minimal effort into Instagram. I only have a little over 20,000 followers on Instagram, which I know a lot of you are like, oh my God, 20,000 followers. That would be amazing. But guess what? You don't need 20,000 followers. I know photographers that have less than 200 followers that are making 7 figures a year. No exaggeration. The answer is really simple. So let's just say that you're a portrait photographer. I know, oh my God, this idiot is just not giving up. Keep it coming, man. I'll just keep removing you. I have no problem. Okay. Yep, there we go. If you are trying to build business, my first advice to you is, given the current evolution of what's happening in social media, do you need to be on TikTok? Do you need to start doing reels and videos and all that kind of stuff? No, you don't. Okay. And here's why. Because it honestly, it just doesn't really lend itself to showing off your photography. I can't tell you how many like portrait and wedding and boudoir photographers I'm finding like on TikTok and Instagram that are doing dances or they're showing off like photography tips. Like, and by the way, they're all doing the same damn photography tip, which is hysterical because it actually just shows how little creativity they have. So if you're going to do, well, anyway, let me back up a second. Those videos mean nothing to their potential clients, right? Nothing at all. So please, number one, if you're going to do TikTok or Instagram Reels or that kind of stuff, understand a couple of things. Just copying what you see everybody else is doing, like really? How freaking pathetic is that? Stop. You look stupid. You look desperate. You look pathetic. If you've seen it, don't do it. Not unless you can find a way to do it in a completely different way, unlike something anybody has ever seen before, then knock yourself out. Allow that trend to inspire you to a new level, to a new place, sure. But just to do it because everybody else is doing it, come on. What kind of business do you think that's going to get you? Really? And then, you know, now there's photographers that are jumping on and doing the Instagram Reels and it's just like slideshows of their pictures. Why should anybody care? I mean, seriously, why should anybody care? Do you think people are going to stop? Look at all the content that we have on TikTok and Instagram Reels and all that kind of stuff, which is entertaining. Do you think people are going to stop and just watch slideshows of your pictures? They better be some freaking amazing pictures, right? So my point is, maintain the status quo for now. Keep doing what you've been doing, even on Instagram. Instagram hasn't stopped showing pictures, right? But pay attention to the trends. They're trends. So what happens with trends? Trends come, trends go. When trends leave, they leave behind stuff that becomes somewhat of a norm. That's when we look at, do we need to be in this or not? You don't need to be a trendsetter on social media. You need to set your own trend with your own photography in life, period. In the meantime, take the extra time that you're getting back, those of you that are trying to make money, by not jumping through hoops and creating TikToks and Instagram Reels every single day, and improve your damn photography. I'm serious. Improve your photography so that your work stands out, so that your work is better than anyone else's in your area, so that people look at your work and say, my God, that's amazing. Because when you do that, you will be able, got to give this guy an A for effort, really do. When you do that, you will be able to command whatever you want from a price standpoint. You will be able to set your own terms. You will have people coming at you from all over the place, right? Period. Okay? So, honestly, that's it. I'm sorry if you thought that I was going to give you some, cool little formula, do this, that. No, the simple fact is, stop stressing. There are better things to stress about. I mean, we use portrait and wedding photographers, portrait photographers especially. I mean, it seems like everybody's a headshot photographer right now, like legit, okay? Instead of worrying about social media, which is kind of the lazy way of doing it, it really is. Go to the internet, Google the Chamber of Commerce for your town or your area, and start reaching out to all the companies that are listed, because those are all the local companies. Those are the people that could potentially buy your services. Actually build relationships. Seriously. It's worked for decades. It worked then, it works now, just as effectively. Be honest with yourself about what you've been doing. By throwing stuff up on social media, it's kind of like, a fisherman fishing. You throw some bait into the water and you hope that somebody bites. That's what you're doing. That's what social media is for a portrait photographer, for a wedding photographer, for a headshot photographer. That's what it is. How many fishermen are able to put a hook in the water and get a bite every single time? Very few. And you know darn well, most of you are not one of those fishermen, not when it comes to photography. So why keep putting so much energy into that? Don't. Go back to some traditional basic marketing, because the interesting piece of it is, what are the categories I'm talking about here? Portraits, headshots, weddings. You can't take those pictures. You can't create those pictures without standing in front of somebody and interacting with them and having a relationship with someone. It's not possible, because you need the person there. You also need the client to hire you to do it. So why are you avoiding building those relationships? Why are you avoiding talking to those people? I mean, I'm sorry, I get it. Some of you are going to tell me, well, I just don't think I'm really good at sales. I haven't said anything about selling anything to anybody. I'm talking about meeting people and talking to people. And some of you are going to say, I'm not really good at that. Well, then why the hell are you shooting portraits or weddings or headshots? So I'm not saying, hey, give up on portraits, weddings, or headshots, but I'm just saying, hey, look, if that's what you want to shoot, awesome. But then understand, if you struggle with that human interaction, that's the part that you're going to have to work on just as much as you work on your photography. I'm finding more and more and more and more. And so here's my rant, and I'll finish. And I know you guys are going to get tired of me saying it, but I'm finding more and more and more on so many levels, all of this great technology we have. And I'm talking not just social media, but I'm talking cameras, I'm talking everything, computers, all of it. It's giving people an extremely false sense of ability. And it's allowing people to think that the concept of running a photography business is so much easier than it really is. And so as a result, there are a lot of people spending a lot of money and a lot of time and putting a lot of hopes and dreams on the line to become photographers, professional photographers running a business, a lot of people who haven't done the legwork. They haven't done the legwork to learn the foundational aspects of photography to actually be able to produce high quality work consistently. And they haven't taken the time to learn how to run a business. Just the basics. And we didn't even get to the marketing stuff, right? And so as a result, they fail, they struggle, and they become the whiners. So, food for thought, gang. For now, stay the course. Keep doing what you've been doing and don't stress about it. It's going to change. Instagram may become completely useless to us as photographers in the course of literally just the next 2 months. Who knows? Could be faster. Could take a year. Maybe it doesn't happen at all. But in all likelihood, everything is going to transition to video. And that means that if you're doing portraits, headshots, weddings, you're not going to get nearly as much traction. You're just not. Because by transitioning to video, what platforms like Instagram are also doing is they're going much heavier after a younger market. So what does that mean? That also means that they're leaving some opportunities open for more mature audiences to find other platforms. So for those of us that like social media, in terms of marketing, those of us that like it, we're going to have to be patient and wait to see where do our customers go. Because our customers tend to not be Gen Zers. The Gen Zers will eventually grow up and we've got to pay a lot more attention to them then. But most of us are not making money from Gen Zers yet. Just not. And that's okay. I mean, that doesn't make them better. I mean, they're young. They don't have money, right? That's the evolution that happens. So it's a matter of, wait to see where it goes, because there's a good possibility that there'll be a whole new social media platform that crops up and comes along, right? Time will tell. But don't stress about it. Don't whine about it. Take all that time and energy for whining and take all the time that you're getting back now by not having to put as much effort into platforms like Instagram. Go pick up your camera. Or better yet, if you're already pretty good with the camera and you're trying to build a business, go build real relationships. Real relationships lead to constant, ongoing, repeating revenue. That's what you want. Okay? All right, gang. So, questions. It's 6:30. Damn, I made it on time. That's pretty cool. So, I'm never on time with this. You're here. Seriously. Put in questions. All right? Maybe the more questions you put, we can get rid of this idiot with the naked high definition website that wants to market himself. How can I help you out tonight? I told you I have one question that was kind of a carryover for last week that I want to deal with. So the question was in response to the demo that I did last week about building lighting backwards, right? The question had to do with how did I get that split light or split lit or split lighting, on the background where it goes from the orange to the blue. So what I want to do, just to kind of break it down and maybe make it a little bit more obvious here. Let's go to the top view first and we'll zoom in. All right, so let's go ahead also and turn off pretty much everything. There we go. So we've got just the background lights. So there's two background lights in play, right? I've got the orange gelled one and I've got the blue gel one. And now, why did I set them where I set them, right? So that's kind of what it comes down to. So let's turn off the blue gel. And I started with the yellow because I wanted to get a fairly hard line on the background. So, I could basically move it anywhere I want, provided that I'm able to get that line that creates the split, right? Now, when I add the blue in, I can back that light up. If I bring the blue light closer, I can do that, but then I run into a problem where it's brighter. If you look up above me, it's brighter up on the upper left, and then it gets darker, and then it merges. The merge is the merge. So by backing it up, I've got more even color now. If we look up above, I've got more even color on that blue, and then I have the yellow. I could even the orange out probably, excuse me, not yellow, orange. I could even that out probably a little bit more. Let's see here. If I bring it all the way out to the outside, yeah, it's going to have a softer blend if I bring it out to here. And by the way, this wouldn't necessarily be bad. This becomes kind of like a 3-color, blend. So part of the trick here, if you will, I hate to call it a trick because it's not really a trick, but this is one of those things. If you want to use this type of a technique, experiment with it, play with it. I mean, and we could change colors here like all day. We could, let's do, we could do the blue and the magenta. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this back kind of where we had it. We can switch them that way. We could even actually, for that matter, do blue and white. Like you could just go on and on and on, right? As long as the colors work together, you could, mix all different kinds of colors. Maybe we add in like, magenta there. Okay, obviously I wouldn't pick those colors based on her skin tone and the shirt, but as far as making the background work, and similarly, keep in mind, like, I'm showing one light low and very close, and these have 7-inch reflectors, by the way. You could still do similar concept with speed lights, etc. We could come over here with this. Let's bring this in really close. And we'll give it a brighter color here. We're gonna go with blue there. Right, and let me experiment just a bit more here. We'll get it down into the frame. There we go. So we kind of get like a streak of light coming in, or for that matter, we could make that a white streak of light and then have the color, okay? Have the color fade off on both sides. By creating the streaks of light, we're also adding some diagonal lines into the image, and we're using the diagonal line to kind of create the guide that takes your eye to the subject. So again, we could go on with this for hours. Okay. I don't know if I have the ability here. Can we put a snoot on these? Yeah, we can. I mean, if you want to work with a snoot, or as they call it, an accent tube, even, we can create different amounts of spread and fill and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to have a fancy snoot. You don't have to spend a lot of money in that. You can use some aluminum foil and you can shape a snoot. Depending on the light that you have, you can use PVC pipe. There's all kinds of things that you can do to create a snoot. So it doesn't have to be particularly expensive, right? If you can afford the accessory, great. But if not, just make one. Use aluminum foil and wrap it around. And it works just fine, because you don't need to have a perfect circle at the end, simply because, remember, the inverse square law will round it out over distance, right? So you keep it fairly round, but it does not have to be perfectly round in the process. All right? So something to consider there, okay? Hopefully that helps. So let me just back up here. I know I saw some questions come in. Let me let's get past all the naked dating site things here, and we'll see what we had from questions. So let's see, from Eek. Best piece of advice I've gotten in a long while. I've been shying away from, but I think I'll work on myself. Yeah, I mean, again, look, and I'm not trying to like villainize anybody, gang, right? But like the photography news websites, it's no different than like manufacturers, right? They've got to keep coming up with news. Manufacturers have to keep coming up with new stuff to buy. Otherwise, everybody buys what their product is, and then they go out of business because they're not selling anything new, right? So the photography blog's got to keep coming up with news. And, is it news that all these changes are happening? Yes. Is there cause for concern? There's a few people that it's impacting really, really big. Most people, it's not. Most of the people that it's impacting are people that are just worried about follower numbers. And follower numbers do not translate into business. They simply don't, okay? So for most of us, it's something, pay attention to it. Keep in mind, I'm a person that relies on follower numbers because of the influencer aspect of my business. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it at all. Hey, because I don't need the biggest audience in the world. I don't need to have the kind of audience that a Manny Ortiz or, a Tony and Chelsea have. It's great. Good for them. And they've worked very hard for that. I don't need an audience that's that big to pay my bills. I need an audience that really wants to learn from me. And I need an audience that's going to pay me for that service. And that's all I need. So it's one of the things. Pay attention, stay aware, but focus on yourself and focus on your business. And I promise you'll come out a lot stronger for it, no matter what direction this evolution goes. But I honestly think it's too early in the whole curve for anybody to accurately predict what the outcome is going to be. I really do. Okay. All right. For Rich, 2 questions. Oh, geez. What is your favorite photograph you've taken and why? And what photographer inspires you and how? So my favorite photograph you've taken and why? Rich. Your best shot? It's your next shot. Favorite photograph I'm taking is the one that I'll take tomorrow or the day after that or the day after that. That's always been the case for me. I have lots of pictures that I love. I have lots of pictures that I'm proud of, but I don't have one that comes to the top of the list. And that's simply because I could take a picture right now and it could be the coolest picture that I've ever done. We could find 1,000 people that agree. Best picture Joe Edelman's ever taken. By tomorrow, I will have already found things that I feel that I could improve on in that picture that I would like to do differently. And I'll be looking forward to the next image. So I really sincerely don't have a favorite image that I've taken. I am proud of the work that I do. It's not the best photography in the world. It never will be the best photography in the world. Again, I've been doing it for 52 years, and that is something to be very proud of. I reached a point where a camera company asked me to represent them, and that is a platform, a plateau that I'm really proud of. But for me, the excitement is in the process. It's not in where I've been. So I don't spend a lot of time looking back on any of what I do. It's really about where can I go with it. As far as what photographer inspires me and how, any photographer that is passionate and puts in the work inspires me, sincerely. I mean, kind of on a bigger level, probably one of my earliest idols was a gentleman who's still alive and still kicking. And I will tell you something that should guilt every single one of you. His name is David Hume Kennerly. He lives in Santa Monica, California. He has won a Pulitzer Prize when he was 23 years old. And for his war coverage in Vietnam, he was the chief White House photographer for President Gerald R. Ford. And he changed the role of the White House photographers because his terms to Gerald Ford for becoming the White House photographer were that he had to have complete access, to which Gerald R. Ford asked him in return, do you want the keys to Air Force One on the weekend? But Gerald Ford gave him complete access. He was able to come and go at will. He was given full security clearance. That is a policy that is held for every White House chief photographer since David Hume Kennerly until we got to Donald Trump. And as we've even heard recently, during the insurrection of January 6th, the White House photographer was banned and not permitted from taking pictures of Donald Trump during that time period. So there's a big chunk of history that we missed. That's not conspiracy. That's not politics. That's just bullshit. It's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate because we took a huge, huge step backwards. But David Hume Kennerly, he's beyond retirement age. He still works. He still shoots. In fact, the very first of the televised January 6th committee meetings, David Kennerly was in the room. You frequently see him on the news photographing huge events. You see him at the White House. You see him in Washington, D.C. If you follow him on Facebook or Instagram, he posts pictures every single day. That is amazing. Most of the photographers that I know that have done it for a lifetime shoot every single day. They make me feel guilty sometimes. I shoot much more than any of you realize. I just don't feel that I need to post it. When I'm pulling my iPhone out and I'm taking pictures on dog walks and stuff like that, I don't have to post it. But these guys do. They shoot and they post every day and they never stop. It's how they breathe. It's how they think. It's what keeps them going. And that I admire. But I sincerely, I admire anybody who is truly passionate about photography. They don't say they're passionate about it. They live it. Their behavior shows that they are passionate about photography. So, all right, let's see here. Gosh, I'm probably going to pronounce this name wrong. I'm sorry, Suhil. Can we specialize in multiple fields of photography, such as portraiture, product photography, astrophotography, etc.? Pros and cons. Pros and cons, Suhil, I wouldn't say there's pros and cons, but I think the pros and cons are in the perception of you as a photographer. So you wouldn't hire an electrician to fix your plumbing and vice versa. So you do have to be careful if you're going to specialize in, let's, in fact, to use yours. You said portrait, product, and astrophotography. So portrait and product photography, you could fit those together, but then astrophotography is kind of like out there, right? Most people would perceive that as the idea of, well, astrophotography is more like a hobby thing than the other two, right? So you never want to be perceived as a jack of all trades and a master of none. So if your astrophotography work is good enough, which, by the way, it's a hard genre to be really good at. There's a lot of astrophotography out there, but there's not a lot of amazing astrophotography out there. Again, just keeping it real, right? So if you're going to try and make money with those, they are two completely different marketing things. Nobody's going to hire you to shoot an astrophoto. They will buy your artwork. People will hire you to photograph a product. They will hire you to photograph a portrait. So I would at least separate those and market them completely differently. But beyond that, you can shoot whatever you want. Don't let anybody tell you what you can and can't shoot. But I wouldn't try to make money with it unless I'm really passionate about shooting it. So if you're passionate about astrophotography, but you're thinking, well, I'll shoot portraits because I know I can make money, you'll fail at the portraits. That business, that will fail. Trust me. So stick with what you're really into. Find your niche. The key to making money as a photographer, I say this all the time, and people think I'm joking, but it's true. And I say it this way to kind of get people's attention. But the key to making money as a photographer is do what you do to the best of your ability. Always keep improving. Always keep working hard. Always keep learning. And then find the people dumb enough to pay you for it. That's how it works. That's how it's worked all the way back to the master artists. Hundreds of years back. That's how it's always worked. It still hasn't changed. Even with all our technology, even with everything we have today, it still hasn't changed. You make money as a photographer by finding people dumb enough to pay you for what you do. Period. Right? So, let's see. Joan, one question. Have you ever considered to translate your video tutorials from English to Spanish? I ask this because I live in Latin America and I haven't found good info as yours on this channel. First of all, thank you for the compliment. Secondly, most of my tutorials, Joan, not the last frame or touch up, but the tutorials, most of them have been translated into Spanish. Check the closed caption button. Okay, not all, but most of them have. These last frame videos, I haven't, unfortunately, because it's still rather expensive to do it. I actually, true story, like my Spanish translations on my tutorials were done by a gentleman who was a math teacher in Venezuela. And his side hustle was doing translations, and he did great work. I frequently would share the translations with people from various Spanish-speaking countries to say, hey, because I realize there's variations in how Spanish is used, et cetera. And I don't have the money to translate it 4 or 5 different ways. So I needed kind of the generic Spanish that everybody was going to be able to understand and that would make sense. So I would have people check it, and he always got great reviews from the people that I asked to read through it. But and while he's very reasonably priced, it would cost me too much money to do these hour-long shows. Gosh, they're back again. Wow. You guys think like I'm just going to stop paying attention and I'm going to let you have at it? Good luck, guys. Oh, and we're still at it. Here we go. There we go. So yeah, Joan, believe me, it's something I keep an eye out for. if we get to a point where it is inexpensive enough that I can do it for all of these shows, you have my word, I will. I'm a big believer in doing that. If it makes the content easier for people to understand, that's important to me. But in the meantime, I do appreciate your kind words very much. Thank you. Okay. Let's see, from Iki, I've improved greatly on my lighting, but finding it difficult to have sharp quality images. I usually shoot on high shutter speeds and apertures of 7.1 and above. The gears I'm using now does not allow me to do this anymore. Any tips on this? So Iki, I'm not sure what gear would you be using now that doesn't allow you to shoot at a high shutter speed and an aperture of 7.1? What kind of settings are you using now? I mean, even shooting wide open, you can still create a sharp portrait if you pay very close attention to where you're focusing and if you're paying attention to depth of field and how you pose your subject. Give me a little bit more information. We're down to 9 minutes, so don't take too long, but give me a little bit more information about the gear that you're using and what kind of settings you're using now, okay? John Bivens, I purchased a hand-painted backdrop really cheap, and I was thinking of cutting it down to use like my Savage paper background size. Is this a dumb idea? Excuse me. No, I mean, John, it's not dumb if you're really, really confident you're never going to need it bigger. Right? You know, the challenge with buying backdrops, let me take a different approach to that answer, because I know you were looking for more meat there. The challenge with any backdrop that you buy, even if it's a gray backdrop, a gray paper backdrop, right? Once you've used it a couple times, how many pictures can you take with the same backdrop before it's just kind of like, right? So understand that regardless of your backdrop, one of the most important things about working with backdrops is finding ways to make them look different, especially if you spent the money for printed backgrounds or backgrounds that have like a scene on them, that kind of stuff, right? You got to really work to find ways to make them look different. So you can do that with color gels. You can do that with depth of field, you know, all that kind of stuff. So really what it kind of comes down to is the hand-painted backdrop. It really depends on what kind of a pattern is it. You know, is there a likelihood that you would ever have a reason to need a bigger backdrop? Those kinds of things. Photo James, thank you for the kind words. I think that's what would ultimately be the deciding factor, John. You know, even if it was big enough that, let's say, you could photograph a family of 6 people on it, okay? One of the questions you might ask is, but do I have a studio space big enough to stretch that out and photograph 6 people on it? Those kinds of things. And if the answers keep coming up, well, no, I'm probably never going to do that. I'm probably never going to do that. Never going to do that. Then sure, cut it down and, you know, use it for there. Depending on how big it is, maybe you can cut it so you even get multiple sizes out of it that you might be able to, you know, do some different things to it or modify one of them, again, to try and create, you know, some different looks to the background. That's kind of how I would approach it. Okay. All right. So let me just make sure that I didn't miss anything else up here. Scroll. Whoever has this naked HD site, I got to give them points for at least, you know, trying. They tried hard, but not working. Daniel, glad you made it to the live stream. Thank you. Even though you're late, we'll let you slide. You can watch the rest of it later. Happy Thursday. So I will take, John, no problem. You're very welcome. I will take the last couple minutes and just remind you guys, all of you, of the TOGKnowledge community. I would love to see you there. Again, a couple things to understand. Number one, if you join, you have to participate. There's no quota. It's not like you've got to do 50 posts, 15 posts. No. But every 6 months, we go through, oh, Joseph, hold about TOGKnowledge. You need to join TOGKnowledge. But before I run out of time, I did see that go by before, and that's the one I was looking for, and I missed it. Best tips for taking portraits of dogs. Joseph, I don't do a lot of dog portraits except of my own dogs. So the fact that they're my own dogs, that makes it a little bit easier because I can get them to, behave accordingly. If it's a dog that you don't know, patience. It's honestly not a lot different than photographing people. I mean, I'm going to tell you that's a really big approach that I would say is, number one, spend a few moments to get to know the dog, to let the dog get comfortable with you. Play with the dog, basically make friends with the dog, right? Have the dog, if it's not your dog, have the dog owner bring some of the dog's toys, some squeaky toys, etc. Make sure you know what the dog's favorite treats are. Things like that, ways that you're going to be able to, kind of get the dog's attention, manipulate the dog. More importantly, your question's a little bit generic. Part of what's going to really decide, well, what tips do you need is what's the style of your portrait going to be? Meaning, are you going to shoot in a natural setting, on location? Are you going to shoot in a studio with studio lights? If you're on a natural setting, it's oftentimes easier, providing that it's a quiet setting, because there's actually fewer distractions, because the dog is going to be more comfortable in a natural setting. When you walk them into a studio, there's like all this stuff and things that flash or make noises. So you got to give them a chance to get acclimated, right? But learn about the dog. Know as much as you can about the dog. If you're going to shoot action shots of the dog, obviously, is the dog's owner able to get the dog to do certain things like run a straight path? Okay, so Joseph says he was going to work in a studio. So, in a studio, it's really a matter of give the dog time to be acclimated, set the studio up for the dog, right? You don't want to have tons of stuff around that's on the floor that the dog's going to damage, because then you're going to be on edge. The dog's going to sense that. So you want to keep stuff up off the floor, have lots of space, let the dog get acclimated to the studio, get acclimated to you. And just like you would actually with a kid or a toddler or a baby, talk to the owner first and get a good sense of like what are good, calm times of the day for the dog. You don't want to try and shoot the dog at a time of the day where the dog's usually like really active and crazy and playing and all those kinds of things. It's honestly the same as shooting people. It's patience, it's prep, it's understanding your subject and building a relationship with your subject. Remember, since dogs don't understand our words, they are masters at understanding our body language and sensing our energy. So if you're frustrated, you're nervous, etc., then, they're going to pick up on that as well. That's the way to approach that. Okay. So, Joan, let's see here. Social networks are filling up with people younger than me selling photography courses to seem more like an advertisement to sell lights or cameras. Oh, Joan, trust me, there's tons of that out there. And you know what? Those people that are doing that, look, I wish them luck. They're going to make some money. You could sell anything and make money off of anything if you do it by the numbers, but you're not going to be able to sustain it, right? The fact of the matter is there's a lot of, I shouldn't say this because some of you may have done this, but there's a lot of really stupid people that buy that stuff. There just are, right? So, even Danny, I'm not saying you, Danny, but asking, do I have a dodge and burn Photoshop course? I'm never going to, why would you buy a Photoshop course from me? Like, think about it. I appreciate that you ask, but what have you ever seen me teach that's Photoshop that would say, oh, Edelman, he's the guy to learn dodge and burn from? So like, why would you pay for that, right? Like, one of the things I want to point out to you, and seriously, just to kind of frame this, right? Don't worry, Joan, about the people that are doing it, right? But here's the thing. If you're ever in a situation you're thinking about buying it, right? I am a firm believer, just so I know you guys see it, but I want to make sure you understand it. The overwhelming majority of the content that I put out into the world, overwhelming majority, and look, I'm not asking for any thank yous. I'm no saint. I'm making a buck. But the overwhelming majority of the content that I put out in the world is free. It's free to provide value. It's free to prove what I can do, what I know, and how I teach. So that when people do hire me then to teach, they understand the value of what I can bring to the table, and that's what they pay for, right? So yeah, all these ads that you see on social media, this is all get-rich-quick stuff. right? And it's all canned crap. It's just the same rehashed stuff. None of it's personalized. None of it's about you. Photographers, you don't want online courses. Online courses are canned content and have no direct impact on you. So if we're talking a canned course or YouTube, oh, YouTube wins every day. Why spend the money? Don't spend the money. That's stupid. But the fact of the matter is, neither of those are still the right way to learn. The right way to learn is do it. Just do it. Dive in. Get your hands dirty. Screw stuff up. And then do the learning to solve problems. And I'll give you one little tip. I'm over time. Daniel, I haven't even read yours yet. I'm going to read in a second, but I'll tell you this. So I'll own this, right? You all know I recently switched, started using the Sonys. So this is my Tamron 150 to 500 lens that I got. Loving this lens. Last night, so this is the Sony a7 IV. I have two of them. I'm using the a7R 4A in the studio, and I have these two cameras that are like my sports cameras and that, because I photographed my grandson playing baseball. So I got these cameras about 2 weeks ago, got the lens a week ago. Last night was the first time I used them. Now, I broke a rule that I always give you, but let me give you the context. I always tell all of you how important it is to read the camera manuals, right? And it is. I'm not changing that statement, but I twist it. Being honest, right? I haven't read the manual yet for the a7R 4. I went through the cameras after I got it and went through the menus and got them set up in a way that seemed to make sense to me. Put this lens on the camera, went to a Little League baseball game with my grandson, 7 and 8 year olds last night. Used the camera for the first time. I sucked miserably. But here's why I did what I did, right? Number one, I wanted to see how intuitive the camera was to use. Could I make sense out of it? I've got a lot of experience, and I've used Sony before, years ago, so it's like I wanted to see. But what that also highlighted for me were what were the things that were frustrating? What were the things that were annoying me? What was I having a problem doing with this camera that it should be able to do, but I couldn't figure out? So the best part of it is I came home and I wrote down a list of the things that were issues for me while I was at this game. This morning, I did two things. One, I started going through the manual now that I've actually dug into the camera a little bit. Two, I went to YouTube and I found some photographers who were shooting sports with this camera, the a7R, or excuse me, the a7 IV, and found what kinds of settings they're using and found the settings that solved the problems that I was having. And so now, this evening, actually, right before I came online, I went out and I was actually just photographing cars because I don't have a baseball game close by. So I was photographing cars going, and I was able to solve all the problems I was having. So now I've got the camera configured the way I want it. So, I'm a big believer in dive in, try stuff, right? And it's not a shortcut. It's not a shortcut, but it's a great way to figure out what don't you know and what do you need to learn. And then you go and you look for resources that are going to help you learn through that. That resource may be a video. That resource may be an article, maybe a book. It's never going to be a course. It's probably going to be a mentor, someone that's got the knowledge and the experience. Maybe you can find them for free on YouTube, or maybe you're going to have to pay them somewhat, but that's how you're then going to work through that. The bottom line is it requires some effort, gang. Learning requires some effort. So really quick here, Daniel, your question was maybe a question for another episode, but also with the theater lighting, the range of lighting means I'm usually aimed to underexpose. So when I'm correct white balance, things aren't unexpectedly blown out, but it's still often hit and miss. Ooh, did I miss the first part? Sorry. I often take photos of live theater, variety shows, and struggle with the lighting design, uses extreme colors, purples, etc. So understand extreme colors are always a problem, especially with digital technology, Daniel. So yes, extreme purples, deep blues, they're brutal when you're doing theater work. That's just a fact of life. But there's something that you say that doesn't add up to me. So this worries me that maybe you've got something out of sync. Your statement about you usually aim to underexpose so that when you correct white balance, things aren't unexpectedly blown out. Correcting white balance should never blow out anything. That makes me think that you're hitting the auto button in Lightroom or Photoshop. And yes, that's a bad plan. Okay. but white balance isn't going to blow anything out. Daniel, I'll tell you what I would encourage you to do, sincerely. One, join my TOGKnowledge. It's not a sales pitch. Join my TOGKnowledge community. Post a couple images in the photo share channel and talk about what your issue, excuse me, not photo share, image help. In the image help channel, talk about what your problem is. So pick some images where you blew things out while you were fixing the white balance. And then in all likelihood, I will ask you to actually upload a couple of the raw files of those same images, and I'll show you how I would process them to see if we can solve that problem, okay? So let's see, going back here, Iki, you're using a Canon EOS RP and a 50mm prime lens. I stop at 1.8. But so why would you shoot it at 1.8, okay? Iki, I think your real problem is somebody told you you've got to shoot wide open to get all that creamy bokeh stuff in the background. Don't shoot portraits at f1.8. Don't. If your lights aren't bright enough to shoot above f1.8, raise your ISO a little bit, but stop down. So what you're talking about is not so much an issue of your images not being sharp. Your images aren't as sharp as they need to be. In other words, not enough of the person's face is as sharp as it should be. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of trying to accomplish something with that wide open aperture that you don't really, really need to. So, Danny, something for a future last frame, maybe mixing hard and soft light. Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. So, all right, gang. So I am over time now. Hey, thank you. I'm glad you guys got going with the questions there. Next week, we'll be back. We'll do some more. Maybe we'll do something with mixing hard and soft light. Maybe we'll solve. Honestly, I like it when we can solve problems. I love it. But we don't always get an hour's worth of questions when we do that. So we'll see what comes up in the next week. And believe me, I'll be keeping track of this, Instagram stuff and social media. There's going to be some big changes. I think it's about time. I look forward to the changes. Change is always opportunity, gang, but it's nothing that you need to stress about. You keep doing what's been working for you until you kind of have to change. And none of us as photographers are at a point where we have to change. We really don't. If you want to make a change, make that change your photography, make that change building relationships with people. You'll get more business that way. I promise you. Have a good week. You know the drill. Go pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios, gang. Take care.